Welcome to the Facilitator Overview for the 2016 season Event Leadership Team Workshops. Start the workshop by introducing yourself and welcoming everyone on behalf of the American Cancer Society.
Hi, I'm Angela. On behalf of the American Cancer Society, I'd like to welcome you to the workshop.
Have participants introduce themselves by saying their name and role on the event leadership team, how long he or she has been involved with Relay for Life, and what zoo animal best represents his or her personality. Say,
As you can see, we have a room full of people with diverse interests. Everyone here has a common mission to work together within your community and plan Relay for Life to fight back against cancer. Today, you will create a shared vision for your event and plan how to get there.
overview the agenda, which is broken into 4 sections: our mission, our team, our goals, and our plan. Overview the ground rules written on the flip chart. Ask,
What ground rules do we want to add to this list?
add any responses to the flip chart. Ask,
As a group, how do we want to hold people accountable to these ground rules?
explain that if the group gets offhand, the off-topic issue will be written on flip chart B, which is the parking lot, to be addressed at the end of the workshop or on another day. Our mission is the first section and should take 15 minutes. Have a participant read the mission statement aloud. Explain how our mission can be broken down into 4 key parts.
Stay well. Help people take steps to prevent cancer or find it at its earliest, most treatable stage. Get well. Help people through every step of their cancer experience. Find cures. Fund and conduct research to better understand, prevent, and find cures for cancer. Fight back. Pass laws to defeat cancer and rally communities worldwide to join the fight.
Begin the mission sharing activity. Before the workshop, the staff partner will have already cut up the mission strips and placed them in a bucket. In this activity, participants have a chance to learn more about the services offered by the American Cancer Society. Pass the mission basket from participant to participant. When each participant has the basket, he or she will say one American Cancer Society event, program, or service that he or she knows of and give a brief description. For example, they may say they know about the Road to Recovery program and share a little bit about it. If a participant cannot think of anything, he or she will take a strip of paper from the mission basket and read it aloud to the group. Continue the activity until all the strips of paper run out or 10 minutes is up. Talk about our aggressive goals and our aggressive fundraising. Say,
Our fundraising needs to be as aggressive as our mission. Our life-saving programs, education services, and advocacy work depend on the dollars raised at Relay. The need is urgent because in 2015, an estimated 1,658,370 Americans will hear the words, "You have cancer." In 2015, an estimated 589,430 Americans will die of cancer. That's 1,620 per day.
our team is the next section and should take 65 minutes. Say,
Now that we've talked about how we are making a difference through our mission, let's talk about our event leadership team. Think about how you feel when you get a craving. Now think about your involvement in Relay. What do you crave from your involvement with Relay?
in this activity, participants reflect on why people get involved with Relay for Life at different levels. These reflections will help the team work together to ensure the Relay is an experience, not just a fundraiser. There are 3 questions on the wall that participants will need to answer. What do participants crave from their Relay experience? What do team captains crave from their Relay experience? And what do event leadership team members crave from their Relay experience? As the facilitator, make sure that participants know that these questions do not refer to their community-specific Relay, but to an ideal Relay. Split the participants into 3 groups and send each group to a different flip chart. Rotate participant groups to all the flip charts, allowing 2 minutes at each flip chart to write and post responses on sticky notes. When done, select 6 volunteers and send 2 of them to each flip chart. Those volunteers should sort out the sticky notes, grouping the similar ideas. Then, they can write down the key ideas from the sticky notes directly onto the flip chart with a marker. Afterwards, give each volunteer pair 1 minute to share the key ideas from their assigned flip chart. And say,
Great! As we continue the workshop, think about what it is that draws volunteers into Relay. For instance, when we talk to potential new relayers, how do we get them hooked? Let's integrate the mission and what people crave.
Explain what an elevator speech is. An elevator speech is a term that comes from the business world, with the idea being that if you had a good idea to share with your boss, your only opportunity would be 30 to 60 seconds while catching him or her in the elevator. Likewise, we want to quickly hook people's attention when talking about Relay. We can use an elevator speech to recruit event leadership team members or teams, ask for donations, or even to talk to businesses about sponsorship opportunities. When doing an elevator speech, always start with the why, the purpose of Relay or a personal story, and keep it short and sweet. Deliver your own elevator speech to the participants.
Hi, I'm Angela. I relay because I'm a cancer survivor. Relay for Life is a team-based event in communities around the world to fight back against cancer. I am the event lead this year. I've been relaying since 2009 when I walked my first survivor's lap. Will you come to our event kickoff? I'd love to have you start a new team for our event this year.
Explain the components of an elevator speech. It includes your name, why you relay, what Relay is, your involvement with Relay, how long you've been relaying, and a call to action. In the next activity, participants draft and practice their elevator speeches to feel comfortable making the ask. First, allow 3 minutes for participants to draft their elevator speeches on workbook page 2. Then have participants partner up and determine who is partner A and who is partner B. Give the partner A's 60 seconds to practice their speeches on their partner. Then, give partner B's 60 seconds to practice their speeches on their partner. Transition into the event leadership team recruitment. Say,
It is critical for us to ensure that we are providing our communities with the best possible experience. This starts with you, the event leadership team.
review workbook page 3, our event leads. This has contact information for the event leads, their staff partner, their area lead volunteer, and their senior manager. Also review workbook page 4, our event leadership team, which has a full roster of everyone currently in that community's event leadership team. Next is an activity for participants to identify the key roles they need to fill on their event leadership team, determine the characteristics of volunteers in those roles, figure out who they know and who will make the ask. Keep in mind that events that are 3 years old or less should focus on all roles, while events that have been going for 4 or more years should focus on additional community champions and team ambassadors. Say,
We are off to a great start, but the stronger we are, the stronger our relay event will be.
have participants turn to workbook page 5, our recruitment plan. As you record responses on the flip chart, participants will be able to write their responses in the workbook. Ask,
What positions do we want to focus on recruiting in the next month?
record responses in the needs column. Ask,
For each of those positions, what skill sets are we looking for?
record responses in the skills column. For this section, participants can use workbook page 6, which gives some of the characteristics of successful volunteers. Ask,
What potential leaders do we know that we can ask?
think about current relayers, sponsors, or community members, and record responses in the who column. Ask,
What potential leaders do we know that we can ask?
and record responses in the ask column. Now it's time to work on the team charter. Say,
Take another look at the craving flip charts. Look at how many items evolve around relationships. Those strong relationships need to start with our event leadership team. We can start by creating a team charter. For those who have heard of a team charter, why would we use one?
take a few responses, but make sure that the responses hit these key points.
Helps us to define our purpose, how we will work together, and the expected outcomes. sets clear norms and expectations, gets us off on the right foot.
Ask the group each of the questions of the flip charts and record their responses. The 4 flip charts are team purpose, which includes these questions.
What is the purpose of this event leadership team? How will each member of this team benefit from the team overall? How will our relayers benefit from this event leadership team?
Goals, which includes these questions.
What is this team focused on achieving? How will our achievements be measured?
Ground rules, which includes these questions.
How should we communicate? How should we treat one another? How will we make decisions?
And finally, meetings, which includes these questions.
When and how often do we meet? Who will be included?
If there are disagreements or conflicting responses, dig deeper and ask the group as a whole to reach a consensus. Next is our goals. This section should take 32 minutes. Say,
Now that we have our team charter, let's dig deeper into our goals.
say,
Let's review our voice of the customer scores from the past year. We use the word customer to indicate that our relayers are people we do the work for, but also with whom the work is being done. More than a guest or participant, our relayers and their input drives how we envision our events.
Note that if the event does not have event level scores, review California Division and national scores, and talk about the importance of promoting the survey to participants. If they don't have their own event level results, that means that not enough of their participants took the survey to record accurate data. As you're going through the scores, keep in mind that 80 is the magic number that we strive for. Throughout this activity, make sure that the cravings flip charts are in a spot where participants can see them. Say,
As we look at your voice of the customer scores, we should keep in mind the cravings we identified. Which of them did we fulfill? Which do we need to keep working on?
have participants look at the slide and in their workbook on pages 7 to 10 to review the scores. Ask participants to point out key trends in the voice of the customer scores, and then break participants into small groups to do their own SWOT analysis. When everyone comes back together, they will share their responses, and you will create a SWOT analysis on the flip chart. A SWOT analysis is a great way to evaluate data. When doing a SWOT analysis, divide your paper into 4 squares. The top left is strengths.
Look at your scores. What are your strengths?
This is where we can write what are we doing well and what things that we can control keep people returning to our relay event. Strengths could include good team captain mentoring, with all teams raising lots of money.
Look at your scores. What are your weaknesses?
In weaknesses, we write about what we could improve and what factors within our control keep people from returning to our relay event. Weaknesses could include poor entertainment scores.
Based on these scores, what are your opportunities?
This is a spot to share what good opportunities we see in the community and what interesting trends are occurring. Opportunities are more about external factors, things that are not completely in the control of your event leadership team, but things you can tap into. Opportunities could be new businesses in the community that need a way to get involved.
Based on these scores, what are your threats?
Again, these are external, factors that are out of the control of your event leadership team, such as what obstacles do we face, and what factors in the community threaten our relay. Threats could include difficulty securing an event location. Have participants, as a group, narrow down the list of opportunities to 5 key obtainable improvements that can be implemented for the upcoming season. Now that you've done the voice of the customer scores, you're going to repeat the same activity for other event data. Have participants look at the slides and in their workbook on page 12 to review their own data. Ask participants to point out key trends in the data regarding survivors, teams, income, and sponsorships. Have participants break back into small groups to do a SWOT analysis about their data. when everyone comes back together, synthesize the SWOT analysis onto the flip chart. Briefly touch on internal goals. Say,
the American Cancer Society does a lot of analysis with all our 5,000 communities to develop goals for our events. These internal goals are based on your community's past relay numbers and your community's potential.
Review the internal goals that are listed on slide 14 and say,
as an event leadership team, you get to determine the push goals for your event. Push goals are potential-based. They should be a stretch, but reachable based upon the information you have for your community. We'll talk more about push goals in the next section.
The final section is our plan. This section should take 53 minutes. Say,
let's turn our goals into an action plan. The recruitment wheel is a pie chart to see the breakout of your existing teams and potential teams across a wide spectrum of categories.
Within each section of the pie are 3 shapes. The square is the number of teams in each category for last year's relay. For example, if this community had 3 bank teams at their 2015 relay, they would put 3 in the square. The circle is the number of entities in your community that are potential teams. For example, if there are 15 schools in the community, 15 would go in the circle. The triangle is the number of teams in each category that is a reasonable goal for this year's relay. Have participants look at the slide and on page 14 of their workbook to see their current recruitment wheel. The square should already be filled in with the most recent relay's data. The circle should be filled in with community data. This activity is to fill in the triangles. Have participants look at workbook pages 15 through 17 to see the list of entities from the circles. The lists are grouped by entities that are current teams, used to be teams, or never were teams. Go through each category to figure out the number of teams in each category that is a reasonable goal for this year's relay. For each group, ask the following 2 questions.
Which lapsed teams could we re-recruit? Who has connections or ideas on how to re-engage these teams?
And also ask,
which entities that have never been a relay team could we potentially recruit? Who has connections or ideas on how to engage these new teams?
Record these responses on the flip chart. Once you're done, tally up each category to determine the number that should go in the triangle for each wheel category. Tally the triangles to determine the event leadership team's overall team push goal. This should be equal to or higher than the internal goal. Keep in mind that communities are expected to meet their internal goals, so their push goal should always be equal to or higher than the internal goal. Say,
this activity has helped you develop your push goals for teams this year. It's a starting number that you can continue to use to develop your final push goal for teams.
Now it's time to start benchmarking. This section can get a little tricky, so be sure to follow along closely. Start by explaining metrics. Say,
we're going to focus on teams, survivors, caregivers, fundraising, and sponsorships. This year, all Relay for Life events will be using the Sponsorship Now program, a consistent sponsorship package with the same benefits across more than 5,000 Relay for Life events.
And say,
when we are talking about benchmarking milestones, we need to talk about the duration of your planning. How many days do you have from the day of this workshop to the date of your event? To plan a strong event, the best practice is 8 to 12 months.
So we're going to start benchmarking by looking at the 25% milestone. Point out today's date on the flip chart. For example, let's say that it's January 1st, 2016. Point out the event date. Let's say that it's May 1st, 2016. And then point out the 25% milestone to the event. In this case, it would be February 1st. Ask,
look at your calendar. What is going on between today and the 25% milestone?
Consider opportunities such as rallies or community events that will help reach these goals. Also consider barriers such as holidays or other fundraisers in the community. With the calendar in mind, have the group determine their 25% milestone goals for survivors, new teams, returning teams, income, and sponsorships, and capture these goals on the flip chart. Participants should also copy them down into their workbook. Participants can refer to workbook page 19, last year's progress, to see how the event did during those same months last year, and think about what trends occurred at those times. Keep in mind that these goals are where the event wants to be 25% of the way to their relay event. The goals do not have to be 25% of their overall goal. For example, if the community has an overall goal of 30 survivors, at the 25% milestone, their goal does not have to be 7.5 survivors. The goal should be whatever is realistic during that time period. Ask the group,
how do we reach this milestone?
Have the group create an action plan for steps they will take to reach this goal, such as update the website, hold a rally, calling old teams, inviting survivors from a hospital, etc. Now that the 25% milestones are done, let's do the 50%. Point out the 50% milestone date. Ask,
look at your calendar. What is going on between the 25% and the 50% milestones?
Again, consider those opportunities and barriers during that time period. With the calendar in mind, have the group determine their 50% milestone goals for survivors, new teams, returning teams, income, and sponsorships. Capture these goals on the flip chart, and participants can also write them in their workbook. Again, keep in mind that just because they're 50% of the way to their event date does not mean that each of their categories have to be 50% of their overall goal. In fact, they'll usually be higher. Ask,
how do we reach this milestone?
Have the group create an action plan for steps they will take to reach this goal as well. Now move on to the 75% milestone. Point out the date on the slide and ask,
look at your calendar. What is going on between the 50% and the 75% milestones?
Again, consider those opportunities and barriers, and with the calendar in mind, have the group determine their 75% milestone goals for survivors, new teams, returning teams, income, and sponsorships. Capture these goals on the flip chart, and participants will also write them in their workbook. Ask,
how do we reach this milestone?
Again, have the group create an action plan for steps they will take to reach their goal. Finally is that 100% milestone, the event date. If the group has not come up with push goals yet, write the internal goals for each category at the 100% line. And ask,
now that we have benchmarked our goals, do our push goals still look good? Are there any factors that came up during the benchmarking process that we need to consider, which may increase or decrease our push goals for the next event?
If the group already has some push goals in mind, write these across the 100% milestone row. If not, write the internal goals and ask the group to evaluate them to see if they want to increase them for their push goal. If the group agrees that the push goals should be increased, adjust them on the flip chart. Keep in mind we do not want to decrease the push goals. Alright, you made it through the benchmarking activity, and now it's time to talk about kickoff. Say,
between today and your 50% milestone, host your Relay for Life kickoff. It is the one-time official launch of the new Relay for Life season in your community, so it should be a big deal. Now think about the kickoff itself. One key to getting people there is to make it an experience they are excited about. Let's brainstorm how to build the fun. Location? Where should we hold the kickoff?
Take some responses from the group.
What should the event look like? A ceremony? A dinner? Something entirely different?
Again, take responses.
What calls to action do we have for kickoff, besides getting returning teams registered for the new season?
Let a few people respond. Now that you've talked about what the rally itself should look like, it's time to talk about promotion. Our goal this year is to see increased turnout at the kickoffs of all of our relay communities. So say,
we want our past teams, survivors, and maybe even sponsors at our kickoff. What can we do differently to promote kickoff so that we get a high percentage of teams to attend.
Next, briefly talk about the relay planning tool. You can say,
as you transition into recruiting your ELT members, teams, and others to Relay for Life, it is important to keep in mind the relay planning tool.
If the event is not familiar with the tool, share that it tracks financial progress of the event and shows historical performance. It organizes event leadership team member plans, and it keeps Relay for Life prospects such as teams, volunteers, sponsors, etc. on the radar. Participants can turn to Workbook page 20 to learn more about the Relay Planning tool. If the event is currently utilizing the Relay Planning tool, lead a discussion on what has gone well and what the event leadership team can do to use the tool even more effectively this season. If the event is not currently utilizing the tool, lead a discussion on the barriers to using it and what the event could do to get more comfortable. Finally, the closing. Wrap up by recapping the agenda. Share the next steps for the event leadership team. They should complete individual partnership agreements with all event leadership team members. They should recruit additional leaders for open event leadership team positions. They should establish key dates, including meeting dates, kickoff dates, and team ambassador meetings. They should work in the relay planning tool and enter all the information from the workshop into the tool. Say,
let's take a moment to give ourselves a hand. Thank you for your participation today.
End the workshop by having participants take a blank sign. This is based on the most recent National Relay marketing campaign. In the blank, each participant should write a noun that is a reason they relay, such as Relay for Life, Relay for Laugh, Relay for Love. Have each participant fill out a sign and take a group photo of them together. Thank you. You are now ready to have a follow-up call with a coaching development lead volunteer to complete your facilitator training.